Welcome to the weekend here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. We're your Steelers reporters, and as always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of the daily content that comes out from all sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. This podcast is presented by FanDuel. We'll get you the odds, ends, and lines on this Steelers-Packers matchup coming up on Sunday Night Football later in the show. But we also want to give a thanks to our sponsors at Edgar, Snyder and Associates, who also do workers' compensation. When you've been hurt on the job, you need to know who decides when you're better, who decides when your treatment's over, and who decides when your benefits are over. The answer might surprise you. It's the insurance company's doctors. How does that make you feel? If the answer is not great, you need to call someone who's going to help. That's Edgar, Snyder and Associates today at 1-800-94-EDGAR. Call them today, and they'll fight for the workers' compensation rights that you deserve, because remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Brian, this defense, there has been a lot of diagnoses on the true problems of the Steelers defense. They come into this contest not living up to the creed that was expected of them. They haven't been a top defense. They were supposed to be a historic defense, and they're not at the bottom of the league in points per game. They're ranked 19th there, but they are in the bottom of the league in total yards per game, where they rank 28th, passing yards per game, where they rank 31st, rushing yards per game, where they rank 17th. And when you talk to the Steelers coaches, even after that game against the Bengals, where Jamar Chase just got whatever he wanted in the passing game, it seems like the priority right now is still to fix the run game, and that will solve a lot of their problems. Do you feel like that's a misplaced thing, or do you think that that's a misdirect given by both now Mike Tomlin and Teryl Austin when we talked to them this week?
I don't think it's a misplaced concern or a misdirection, but I just think they're not putting quite enough emphasis on the issues they had in coverage. And I think that's why fans are sort of frustrated by the rhetoric coming out of 3200 South Water Street this week. It's sort of like, hey, guys, you're both secondary coaches, background wise. That's why you're in the positions you're in now, because of the work that you did with defensive backfields. Is that why you're having some trouble sort of coming to terms with just pointing the finger at yourselves a little bit with the failings in scheme against Joe Flacco? And what, let's be honest, if he's playing well, is one of the better passing games in the league because of the pieces that they have in Cincinnati. But that's where I think people are annoyed a little bit, is because it's not just about stopping the run. I agree with Tomlin and Austin in the sense that it's not just about stopping the pass, but it's probably more of a 50-50 split, or even 40-60 run versus pass that I think has been their problem most recently. The other thing I'll say, Chris, and I know people don't want to hear this right now because they're still riled up about how poorly the unit played against the Bengals, but Aaron Rodgers said they're not going to ride the roller coaster after the game. I tend to not do that either. Just a week ago, some people, I think, mistakenly were saying, oh, look how great the Steelers defense actually is, when they smothered the Browns. But that's the difference between the Browns and the Bengals. Now you've got another good opponent coming in here Sunday night in the Packers. So this will be kind of the ultimate litmus test of, can you get back on track, or is to a trend, as Mike Tomlin says, and they're going to exploit the same weaknesses that the Bengals were able to.
When we talked to Teryl Austin during training camp, one thing he brought up was not letting problems turn into bigger problems and compound week to week. When they experienced adversity, they needed to bounce back. And earlier this year, when they played the Seahawks, they bounced back from that because they had two really rough defensive performances where, granted, it wasn't, the Seahawks scored 31, and about 7 of those points were on special teams. But still, you allowed a Jets team to drop 32 on your head, and your offense had to pull it out. And then still the Seahawks got at least 24 on offense. And that was rough. But then the next 3 games, they limit the Patriots with their turnover ability. They are able to beat the Vikings in Ireland, and they're able to contain a run game that was looking pretty solid going into that week. And then you play the Browns, and even without turnovers, you take control of a game against a rookie quarterback and do what you're supposed to do. And so it looked like for at least a 3-week period, there was progress. And even in the run game, you could see the success when either they forced turnovers in the run game or they limited to a team to 70 yards or less on the ground. their defense could play at the pace that I think that they kind of wanted to play. And in the first 2 drives, I thought that was the case against the Bengals. They forced 2 punts. They were getting them off the field. And even with a couple third down conversions, the Steelers were able to win a lot of those. But when Chase Brown started to run the football on them, then you started to see the cracks in the defense get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the Bengals were able to take advantage for the rest of the game. They allowed 142 rushing yards on the day to the Bengals, the second most only to the Jets that they've allowed all season long. I hear what the Steelers coaches are saying in that, they have to shore up the run, because when they shore up the run, it allows them to do more there, because then they can maybe be more aggressive and devote an extra person to coverage to help take away certain things. But to your point, they also have to be sharper when they're in those moments. As I note, when I look at this Packers team, the Packers are the number 1 third down offense and the number 1 third and long offense in the NFL. The Steelers, meanwhile, have been bad on third down period. They're 25th in with a 41.9 allowed conversion rate on third down, and they're 18th in third and long. And so this is a team that, even if you do end up stopping the run, which is still an important thing to do when Josh Jacobs runs the ball, this team is really sharp. But even when you do get in third and long, you got to win those positions. You got to take away Jordan Love's first read, and you got to make a guy who does hold on to the ball quite a bit actually hold on to the ball.
And you got to win one-on-one matchups if you get them. Now, those don't come all that often for someone like TJ Watt, but I thought there were times against the Bengals where Amarius Mims, the second-year right tackle, he did his job and neutralized TJ. In this game, if Matt LaFleur and the Packers devise a game plan where they're going to say, hey, we've already heard enough from Packers fans over the years about how we should have drafted TJ Watt, let's not let him go off tonight in this game, then Alex Highsmith needs to win on the other side. Or Nick Herbig, but it's a shame that they traded him before the Bengals game, and we haven't seen him since. But never mind. He was there. He just wasn't really playing very much. But I think it all does work together. And I know listeners don't always want to hear that because we're so conditioned. We want the blame game. We want to know whose fault everything is. But when you give up 33 to a QB who's been with the team for 10 days and doesn't move that well, unless it's the final drive of the game, then a lot of people had issues, and there were a lot of people responsible for the breakdowns. So one thing I would sort of quibble with a little bit, I mean, you mentioned them stopping the Patriots because they got the turnovers. Like I said at the time, I felt like those were a little bit fluky, and otherwise, I mean, Drake May in New England, especially by the end, they were dicing them up. Hunter Henry looked like Hunter Gronkowski. They couldn't cover him. They were fortunate, and I don't want to discredit them. Don't take anything away from them because they took the ball away from the Patriots. But I think a lot of us are asking, like, okay, what if you don't get that tip and that pick? What if Ramondre Stevenson doesn't forget how to carry a football in that game? Do you still win against a team like that? And I think we saw last week the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 2 weeks since Ireland, so that really 3 weeks since they forced a turnover on defense. They didn't force a turnover on the Browns either. They, of course, had that bye week. So it's been a while since you've seen a defensive turnover from the Steelers.
In the Vikings game, too. I mean, they played a lot better in that game, and, especially early getting the pressure on Carson Wentz. But we saw how the bottom fell out at the end. Granted, injuries hit Jalen Ramsey out. That certainly hurts. But those lapses, those miscommunications on defense, whatever you want to call them, those coverage busts, even in that game, they couldn't put a full 60 minutes together. So, I mean, that was, I don't want to say a worrisome performance, but it's one that you look back on and you're like, they were dominant until they weren't.
Yeah, I mean, when Ramsey, Porter, and Eccles were all out, and then they gave up that 81-yard bomb, it was kind of like, okay, like so you got to fix some things. But
Teryl Austin did fault himself for that one. So for the people who say that he and Mike Tomlin are always deflecting, that's not true. I mean, he took that one on his shoulders.
Not credit, but demerit, I guess. Accountability, if you will.
Yeah.
But to your point, they do need to play cleaner football, and I still don't think we've seen a complete game from this team, which is good and bad, right? Because the bad is, man, haven't seen a complete game from this team. It's about to be week 8, but also they're 4-2, first place in the division, and they haven't played their best football yet. And if they could get a few of those really good football games out in this next stretch where you're going to play the Packers, the Colts, and the Chargers, 3 teams that I believe are all leading their divisions right now, and you can win at least 2 of those 3, I think it sets a really good tone for the next quarter of the season as you'll be crossing the halfway point, getting into the third quarter of the season. So I do think there's a lot of potential still there for this team, but to your point, they have to clean things up. I think that there's also some isolation that goes on with Steelers fans when they talk about the team and they say, how are there still miscommunication problems? No one else has that problem. Everybody has miscommunication problems. I watch too much football where I see too many coverage busts or too many just, hey, we got lost for a second here because one guy jumped out of position for a second here. It happens, but this defense is built on being able to pull that off. And that's where I think this team has to be sharper. I asked Teryl Austin about disguises this week because I thought that was a big part of what they've been trying to do. People say, oh, they don't disguise anything. They disguise a lot. Problem is they're not being detailed in their disguises. When they're running the cover 2 invert, guys are lining up in one way to show man, and they're dropping into their zones, but they're dropping into their zones in a way that doesn't take away the things that they're planning to take away. Like, for example, T. Higgins on his 29-yard slant touchdown, Patrick Queen needed to squeeze him a little bit more. And if he does, it presents a tougher window.
He's kind of looking over it. I think it was Cole Holcomb, right? And they're kind of like looking at each other like, what's going on there? But yeah, you're right. That's where the details come in. And you were, to your credit, Chris, you were grilling Teryl Austin about that on Thursday to try to get to the bottom of what's going on there.
Thank you. And I
thought unfairly, because like you said, there's sound strategies on paper going in, but the players do need to execute, and or the coaches need to make sure they drill down on those techniques and finer points of the details.
And I think that was the other thing that I thought was really interesting when I asked him about the balance of calling those when they're not working versus just going and we're going to do the basic things and we're going to take things away because we're not doing those. And he basically said, hey, like, if we're not getting it right, it's my job to understand what we can't actually do when it comes to those disguises. Because if the day that we stop disguising what we're actually trying to do, that's the day that we need to give up. And so you're going to see this team continue to throw those disguises at opponents. It's going to be it's just going to take a matter of actually executing those disguises well. And that's where I think a lot is going to have to happen. I want to talk more about the matchup and what the Steelers need to do on the other side of this break here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. But first, remind you, this show is brought to you by Olivian Numismatic Rarities. When you go to, if you got old gold or jewelry collecting dust, turn it into instant cash safely and securely at Olivian Numismatic Rarities, which is you can find in Pittsburgh's Shady Side neighborhood. Gold prices are at historic highs, and O&R pays top dollar for your unwanted gold, silver, and coins. Stop by the Premier Gallery at 5833 Ellsworth Avenue in Shadyside, or learn more at onrcoins.com. Stop by their Shadyside Gallery there, or you could call them at 412-900-COIN today, or visit onrcoins.com. That's onrcoins.com, or calling 412-900-COIN for Olivian Numismatic Rarities. We're also brought to you by Goldberg, Persky, and White. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky, and White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation at Goldberg, Persky, and White. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. A reminder from on FanDuel and all the odds, ends, and lines you can get there. Of course, you got to go to FanDuel.com to take advantage of all their amazing different opportunities to bet. But if you look right now at FanDuel, they have the Steelers as 3-point home underdogs to the Packers. That hasn't moved all week. They've started that there. But the one thing that has moved is the money line. The money line has started a little bit higher, but it's came more towards the Steelers, with them now at plus 128. The Packers money line now at minus 152. The over-under also went up by 2 points this week, which started at 43.5. Today, it's at 45.5 on Friday morning. So go to FanDuel.com to place all your sports bets today on this this game and all the contests in sports across the board.
I would recommend the Arthur Smith parlay, and that is a touchdown scored by Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington, and Connor Heyward. You say it sounds crazy, but it's National Tight Ends Day. All four of them have a score over the last couple weeks.
They all scored last week.
Connor didn't last week.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. It was 4 touchdowns, but the 3 tight ends. You're right. So wait, for funsies, I want to punch this in now. What kind of odds do you get on FanDuel when you do anytime touchdowns? We got to find the matchup. Okay, this is how the beauty of the FanDuel app. You can do all these different things. You can do same game parlays. All right, we got touchdown scores. All right, so let's go to touchdown scores on FanDuel. We're going to do Darnell Washington anytime. Bang. That's plus 1,700. Jonnu Smith anytime. Plus 1,300. Pat Freiermuth plus 1,900. And then where is Connor Heyward? Plus 6,000. If you do all four, it won't let you do all four because it says that it's too high. The odds are too high if you try to do all four. So you can't do all four there. Let's see if it does. It still won't let you do the top 3. But point being, you get some great odds if you went down and did Connor Heyward. That would actually be a pretty good one to have there. But either way, again, some really good odds for the Steelers tight ends to get some points. But let's talk about this Steelers offense. We talked a lot about the Steelers defense. This Steelers offense, I do feel like, has been finding some weird bits of rhythm in the run game and the pass game. They're 11th in scoring. They're the 8th best third down offense in the NFL. They're the best at third and short in the NFL. Their red zone, they're number 4 in the NFL. They're doing a lot of the things right, I think, as they're trying to figure things out, Brian. But this is still a team that that everyone says doesn't have a number 2 wide receiver. They're getting Calvin Austin back this week. Do you see this offense clashing well with the Packers defense? That's also, they've been a top 10 defense. They're the best. They're the best as far as limiting yards per play. They're the number 2 run defense in the NFL right now. Is this a problematic matchup for the Steelers offense and what they like to do?
It could be, but you're right. I mean, the Steelers offense is rolling right now. Aaron Rodgers is slinging in touchdown passes, jumping like Luigi just won a mini game. Actually, Aaron Rodgers might be more of a Waluigi guy. That's just a suspicion that I have, but that's a topic for another day. And the reason why I'm optimistic that it can continue against a statistically good Packers defense, one that's been taking away big plays for the most part, although they showed some cracks against the backup quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, last week in Arizona. This offensive line is gelling for the Steelers. And, when I was looking at this game on paper before the season and you're kind of going down and making your picks, at first I'm like, no way Aaron Rodgers is going to lose at home to the Packers. And then I'm like, now they got Micah Parsons. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is going to lose in Pittsburgh to the Packers. But now the way the Steelers have been protecting lately, I know Mike is coming off a 3-sack game, would have been 4 if not for a hip drop tackle penalty. I think they can at least limit him. You're never going to completely take him out of the game. It's like facing Myles Garrett, although the Steelers just about did that a couple weeks ago at Acrisure Stadium. So you've got that on your side too. I think the way this O-line is playing, it does make me think that Aaron Rodgers can dial it up and be locked in against his former team, whether or not the Steelers are able to run the ball effectively and efficiently, because the Packers are really good at shutting that down.
I think that's going to be a big part of it too. If the Steelers can break the Packers' positive trends, running the ball on them, I think that could put some stress on different things that they haven't had to worry about for most of this year. But also, again, I think there's some situational points where the Steelers, if they can get in the right spots, they can flip some things in their favor. For example, the Steelers, like I said, are the best at 3rd and 3 or shorter on offense this year. The Packers, despite being an overall decent third down defense, they rank 12th overall in third down. They rank 26th when it's 3rd and 3 or shorter. If the Steelers can get in those spots by winning 1st and 2nd down to make their third downs consistently of the shorter variety, that could help them win more consistently, possess the ball more, which is something they haven't done well this year. They ranked 29th in time of possession. I think that's a big key for this team, is to possess the football, have those longer drives, and eventually put pressure on the Packers to be efficient with their possessions as well, so that Jordan Love, who I think has had a really good start to the season, but the one factor that gets in Jordan Love's way is when he's under pressure. You look at his numbers across the board. He He does well when he's blitzed in general. He does well when he's not blitzed in general. But the key part is if the blitz or just a 4-man rush creates pressure, he goes from averaging 10 yards per attempt to 3.6 yards per attempt. And that's where the Steelers have to be able to win. Is this team is built on getting pressure and pressuring the quarterback, making them uncomfortable in the pocket. The defense has to be able to do that. But again, I don't think you can even get to that point if you don't stop the run in the first place.
And he's probably getting another weapon back in Christian Watson, who
a big one
ACL late last season, but he is set to return, and he really stretches the field. They drafted Matthew Golden in the first round to do that. Romeo Doubs is pretty difficult to deal with when you get in close in the red zone. He's so good at those contested catches, but so is DK Metcalf. So I think taking advantage of the Packers cornerback tandem, which I think doesn't really stand out to me a ton when you talk about Nate Hobbs and Keyshawn Nixon, both smaller but quicker guys. That should be a matchup that DK Metcalf can take advantage of. So I would have said that last week too about the Bengals, and DJ Turner, he did what he did to DK. I didn't see that one coming. So I think that the Steelers offense they're going to be able to pick apart pieces of this Packers defense as long as Micah Parsons doesn't make it a very difficult, long black and blue kind of night for Aaron Rodgers.
All right, the stage is set. The Steelers coming off their short bye after Thursday Night Football. They're playing home on Sunday Night Football. Brian, give us your X factor of the game, or the thing that decides the game the most, and then your final score prediction for who wins this one.
Yeah, when you have the familiarity between two sides like Rodgers and the Packers have, I generally side with the coach because I feel like they've got kind of a broader understanding of what's going to make their former player tick. But Aaron Rodgers is as cerebral and has as much football IQ as anybody. He's not quite as old as Matt LaFleur, but it's close. So I think he's also less prone to some of those matchup nuances. I just have a feeling, kind of like I did when it was Steelers-Vikings in Ireland, it's just one of those games where there's cosmic forces at play. The Rooney family in Dublin, and now Rodgers against the Packers. I feel like this game probably means a little bit more to him than it does to Green Bay. If there's a spite factor to be had, notice I didn't say revenge. I said spite.
Spite.
So we're choosing our words carefully here.
Indeed.
All that said, I think on paper it's basically a coin flip. I'll go with the Steelers winning at home 30-28. I think a high-scoring game, both defenses running around like crazy trying to track down these quarterbacks and their receivers and the running game. So give me the Steelers by 2. Straight up. What do you say, Chris?
I look at this game and I see a Steelers team, like you said, Aaron Rodgers, being motivated, not for revenge, but I think out of a sense of like, hey, he has the chance to become the 5th quarterback in NFL history to beat every 32 to all teams in the NFL while they're in the league. And this is a chance to do that in spectacular fashion while the lights are on. I think the team coming off of a longer break and being at home is going to allow them to have a couple advantages on their side. I also think this is a big week for Jaylen Warren against one of the better run defenses in the NFL, because he averaged decently against the Browns. They just kind of spread the ball around a little bit more when they played a team that was the number 1 run defense in the NFL when they played them. I think this is a week for Jaylen Warren to get going, and that helps them kind of settle in and have a plan against Micah Parsons, much like they had a plan against Myles Garrett. The offense puts up points. The defense still gives up some, but they get a couple turnovers in this one. Similarly to you, I have the Steelers going 30. I just have the Packers at 24. It'll still be a 1-score game down to the wire. Steelers pulling out a close win, but I think it'll be a good win for the Steelers to get them back on the winning side of things.
So we're both saying another 30 piece for the Steelers offense. It's been a while since we could say that. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, or predict that, I should say. Aaron Rodgers trying to beat every team in the NFL. Kenny Pickett trying to be employed by every team in the NFL. for his
At
career.
this point, he might be. But there are your predictions for Steelers Packers on Sunday Night Football from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It's the North Shore Drive podcast. Stay tuned for all of our content coming out throughout this week, including our post-game reactions, as we will all be there at the stadium. Myself, Brian, Jerry Dulac, Ray Fittipaldo will have our full team there ready to go, giving you live coverage during and after the game. And be sure to read all our work at post-gazette.com as we continue through. We'll see you here after the game Sunday night on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.